Every so often, there's a movie or TV show that decides to chuck subtlety out the window and go all in with the title. We're talking about Snakes on a Plane, Sharknado, Killer Clowns from Outer Space, or Tiger King. No beating around the bush, no cryptic hints, just straight up in your face titles that leave no doubt about what you're in for. And now we have a show on Netflix called Florida Man, like the meme, the one that came about in 2013 because of a Twitter account, but had existed in other ways from way earlier than that. I actually have a full history that I want to go into, but let's start off with a game
the meme?
about the meme, about Florida Man in general. But it's called Snakes on a Plane, this game, or Sharknado, where I have you have to determine which it applies to, which these facts apply to.
Sharknado came out in like 2013, I think, and Snakes on a Plane 2005.
Yeah, but this trivia is funny trivia. So let me just give you the first one and we'll go from there. Contrary to popular belief, the main character, Samuel L. Jackson, or Ian Ziering's agent, insisted that the title be changed because that person couldn't work on a film with such a title. So either Snakes on a Plane or Sharknado. Wait, we're not done yet, though.
Okay, all right.
When Jackson or Ziering heard about this, he responded with a much cited comment, "We're totally changing that back. That's the only reason I took the job. I read the title."
I'm going to go with Snakes on a Plane because if I remember correctly, I do think I read somewhere, it might have been the Wikipedia or something, where they initially had a different name for it. And then, so I'm going to go with Snakes on a Plane.
It is Snakes on a Plane. And if you were around in 2006 when that came out, it was a big wave of internet fandom. So the second one is the film's title originated at an after-work happy hour among Hollywood colleagues to see who could come up with the most awful pitch for a movie. Snakes on a Plane or Sharknado.
So this is like all these statements are true,
yes,
right?
So far, yes.
I'm gonna go with Sharknado.
No, that was actually also Snakes on a Plane.
Okay.
All right, third one. Lindsay Lohan turned down a leading role in the movie.
Snakes on a Plane. Right?
Sharknado. She was offered to be a role in that. Shot in 18 days.
Sharknado.
Yes, that is Sharknado. You got that.
Yeah.
Now we'll do a little true or false follow-up. Fox has greenlit a Snakes on a Plane TV show in 2021, though no one has been cast.
I'm going to go with true.
And that's false.
False.
So do you want me to get into the history of the meme, or do you want to start talking about the actual show
I want to talk about the actual show first, because I feel like I have a lot to say. Because originally, I thought that when I heard the name, just Florida Man, I didn't know what it was. I didn't even know where it was streaming. I thought it was going to be a comedy about some straight man character living in Florida.
I didn't think it was going to be a straight man. I thought it was going to be a crazy man.
No, I thought
it was going to be a man on bath salts.
I thought it was going to be a straight man character because Florida is kind of known as a crazy place. I know that like Big Mouth even makes fun of it. Every place, every like show that has Florida in it makes fun of Florida. But I actually went to Pensacola back in October, so I was kind of excited to see this show because it does have like incredible scenery and beaches. I was wondering even if they were going to have the Floribama Shore, which I visited, and just like in different places because I did like visiting Florida.
Did you see any marshes or crocodiles while you were there?
No, surprisingly there were no gators roaming around or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so the summary for this show I have is Mike. He's a bodyguard for kind of like a mafia boss who works as a New York criminal.
I just have him as a thug.
Yeah.
When I watched it, I thought he was just like a gun for hire almost.
The criminal that he works for is called Moss, and he's tasked with having to find Moss's unhappy girlfriend, Deli, who he has somewhat of a relationship with because she's run off to Florida because, again, she's unhappy, and a multitude of events lead him to a weird reunion with his family, being investigated for the police for a murder, and more problems than he could ever imagine, really.
That's the entire first episode in a nutshell. I mapped it out 10 minutes at a time. So the first 10 minutes, I was actually surprised, didn't actually have anything to do with Florida. They just mentioned it once where Deli, like you said, the girlfriend of the gang leader who has inherited the gang from his father, but is very childish, immature, and also unstable.
And much like Mike, and you can actually draw parallels between the two of them, Mike's father is also kind of an outlaw, or at least he lives in Florida.
Well, he was the chief of police in Florida, but now he has ties to a gang.
He's kind of like a hard ass, kind of like Mike is. And Mike reminded me a lot. I have a couple different comparisons here of a less cool version, I felt like, of Mike from Breaking Bad, Mr. In-Between, and Irving, which was Bobby Cannavale's name from Mr. Robot. And there's also hints of the night agent as well.
So did you recognize him at all? His name is Édgar Ramírez in real life. He's known from a movie that came out a long time ago called Carlos. He was also in Assassination of Gianni Versace and also Zero Dark 30.
Actually, oh wait, Zero Dark 30, very beginning. Okay, so that's where I know him from.
Yeah, so he's this recovering gambling addict who obviously used to be a detective and then got fired. He has an ex-wife. All this baggage. But the interesting thing is, in the first episode here, it looks like it's all just going to be a murder mystery. But if you look up the description of the actual show as a whole, it's a treasure hunt. And they do show you that there are like bits of gold that he used to find in a fish. They keep on showing you like these gold coins in a flashback. And then at the end, the ending twist of the first episode clearly shows you it's not going to be a murder mystery the entire time.
Well, I think it's important to kind of address that there's going to be 7 episodes in this show. It was longer than I thought it was going to be. Like I said, I thought this might be like a 30-minute comedy show. It's not like that at all. It's almost an hour. And we start off with Mike. He introduces himself in a therapy session. He talks about how he lost his wife and job. And then we see the gold coin that you're talking about in a fish. I liked, one of my favorite parts of the episode was actually right after that, which is kind of the intro. Mike, he's in a store. He meets a man named Gil, and Gil
he's in like a Home Depot.
Yeah, he's looking at hammers. Calls over a guy. That guy's name is Gil. He owes Moss like $200,000, some crazy sum of money. But it leads to this ridiculous chase scene in this store where like Gil, he just takes off. He starts flipping merchandise over so that it like kind of creates obstacles for Mike to get over. And then it leads to the back room where Gil continues to run. And it's actually not Mike that catches him. He trips over a pallet. And then it's almost like kind of those NBA plays where like a character lands on their leg wrong because you see the bone.
Like Peter Griffin.
Well, this Peter Griffin's was like very minor compared to this. His bones, Gil's bones, sticking out from his leg.
Did you ever see that like weird basketball player where the guy shot the basket?
That's exactly what I'm talking about. The college play.
So Gil, it's important to notice that this is a year after the group therapy session that we're introduced with Mike, and he actually knows Mike through that group therapy. So I guess a lot of people that Moss owes money to goes to this gambling group therapy. So this isn't the first time they've met. However, because Mike has threatened Gil and he ends up with a broken leg, I guess he's sort of done his job. And so...
Or so we think. Because later on we see that Gil, like Moss is... Gil's being tortured by Moss. And he's asking for $200,000. He even, like, kind of puts the gold coin that we were talking about earlier inside Gil's mouth. And, like, he says, you can either swallow this or spit this out. But if you spit this out, you're basically promising to give me $200,000.
Moss has no idea what that gold coin is. Gil offers it to him as collateral. And then Moss obviously doesn't accept it. But you were saying that this is your favorite moment or one of your favorite moments of the episode was when Gil got hurt at the beginning.
So, yeah, I should probably mention the first 20 minutes of this show I was really into. This was the Florida man that I thought we were going to get because a ton of crazy stuff happens.
Well, it's like I said already, the first 10 minutes felt like they were in Philly. The second 10 minutes felt like they were in Florida, but with his family. For the most part. Yeah. He gets there and some crazy stuff happens.
Well, yeah. So, I mean, like, basically, Deli, she's, like I said, the unhappy girlfriend of Moss, decides to take off for Florida. I found Mike and Deli's relationship a little strange because we saw early on in the episode that Mike also likes Iris, who is now a new detective, but was his ex-wife. Yeah, but she says that she's
there's a
upgraded.
There's a lot of women who are introduced as possible love interests, even later on The Reporter.
It seems like Deli, though, is the main one because we keep on getting flashbacks throughout the episode.
Too many flashbacks.
Too many, yeah. I had it as a con because it was just like a continual joke of basically right after they had sex, they were like, this is the last time we have to do this. And
during sex. Yeah, he just keeps on imagining his life with her. And there's really no reason for it.
It's not like really Deli was that compelling of a character to watch, or I had that much reason to actually care.
She's pretty. She's a supermodel in real life, so I mean, there's that. But yeah. So I see your point.
He goes to Florida and he picks up a conveyor gun off the conveyor belt. I found that really funny. Apparently, that gun belongs to Clark Gregg Coulson from the MCU,
or Sheriff Ketcher in this show.
He's going to be in this show for some reason.
Well, he's directing the last 2 episodes of it too, so he's got his hands in there, as well as Jason Bateman, who isn't directing. He's an executive producer, so because of the Ozark connection through Netflix, and I think he also has some other like contract with them. This is one of his shows.
I can only hope that what'd you say Clark Gregg's character's name
Deputy Sheriff Ketcher.
I can only hope he has more than just a storyline of him trying to find his gun, because that's what makes it seem like it's going to be in the first episode.
I think he's going to be the main guy who's going to be tracking Mike. Like, that's just the start of what, like, once he figures out who stole it, then it's going to be him trying to, and then Officer Andy is going to play the kind of, like, dual role. However, we're only in the first 20 minutes, so he arrives in Florida, and then he immediately makes his way to the beach.
Yeah, he makes his way to the beach, and that is 100% what Pensacola. It reminded me of the Floribama beach because, like, where the lifeguards were sitting, those type of like kind of.
I mean, it's a beach, man. You've seen one beach, you've seen them
all.
No.
No. Like you could have asked me where it was, and I would have guessed Florida.
Were there a lot of drowning women when you went there? Because that's the first thing he sees as well. And what does he do?
He runs in. Yeah. He ends up saving her, but then she accuses him of violating her because he saved her without her top on. And then he sees the top.
She was saying that he groped her so much that the top fell off. Not that because she had it. Yeah, okay.
But he runs back in for the top, and then a shark makes his way towards him and then like attacks him. He kind of screams, and it cuts to black.
Definitely the most Florida man that this show gets.
Well, if it couldn't get any better, like just how ridiculous that scene continually came to be. He wakes up in the hospital. That's where we're introduced to Patsy. That's his sister.
Patsy from Startup Connecting. She was the main character in that. Startup is also another Florida show, so I liked how she came.
Yeah, you're right.
She's a little bit older, but yeah, that's.
And
cool.
Then there's Ty, also Patsy's daughter. But,
I didn't have much on Ty, but
yeah. But then Mike wakes up and realizes that his shark attack apparently went viral on the internet.
And Patsy doesn't care.
Yeah,
his sister didn't ask him anything about it. She's like, I know who you are. You're not that type of pervert.
She was also, I think she was more interested in the fact that Mike did not tell her that he was going to be in Florida.
Yeah, the family dysfunction is present because partially his father, Sonny, is well known in the, I guess, Coronado area for being the ex-police chief, so he still has ties to them. Yeah. But he's also like part of this treasure ring, if I'm understanding it correctly, maybe a gang.
I think like all the police someone is, because we even see Andy later on in the episode when he's interviewing Mike's dad about something, and he's like, look, I've looked the other way plenty of times before.
He even gave Mike the lead as to where Deli is because they tracked the car for him. And he was like, I'm doing this because of your father.
Yeah.
He gives him that, and what happens as soon as he gives Mike that information?
Well, he's able to find Deli.
Mike is.
Deli is bringing a guy to like kind of this house in the middle of nowhere, and then we see
a cabin.
Yeah. Mike is kind of outside the cabin as they walk in. And then we don't hear something for like a minute or so. And then bang, we hear a gunshot. And I was like, okay, so what's the big deal? Deli just killed the guy that she brought home for whatever reason.
In my mind, I'm like, Deli's probably dead. So
you were right. Because he walks in and Deli was dead. That was a complete shock to me. I was surprised. And that's why I was like, okay, this show actually has some type of like twist to it, some type of bite. Because I was like, because it's brutal too. There's blood all over the bed.
I mean, it looks kind of traditional to me, like what you would see maybe in a Law and Order at the very beginning of an episode. Like her body's lying there, but the weird thing to me is instead of like putting on gloves or doing anything or getting out of there, he immediately starts like scrounging around in her blood and then going over to her purse. And I was like, you can't leave that purse
strange,
there.
Yeah.
And then he took the purse with him, which I was happy about for his own like not getting arrested for this murder. But then we find out that he was also being tailed by his dad's guy.
Yeah.
Who I thought at the time. Because what happens to the body? What happens to Deli's body?
Apparently, it's all cleaned up. Like, when Mike left, someone came and decided to clean the whole thing up.
So I thought it was him. I thought it was Sonny's guy, the dad's guy, who was like, okay, I'm just going to go in there as a fixer and, like, fix this up, and you can deal with your son's problem later of being a serial murderer. But that didn't end up being the case.
And also the person who supposedly killed Deli is wanted on the... we see him on the television screen. We see his picture. The reporters are talking about it. So it's almost like everything is kind of coming into play.
Yeah, between the 30 and 40 minute mark, that's when Mike makes his deal with Moss that says, I'm off the hook for all my debt, not just the $50,000 we talked about, if I find your sister, or not your sister, your girlfriend, and I bring her home, right? But then that's immediately when she's found dead, and he can't tell Moss that she's dead.
And I don't know about you, but like right after the shark attack, that's when the show lost a little interest for me. Right after Deli died, because I did like the scene where she ended up to be dead. After that, that's when the show just screeched to a halt, in my opinion. I felt like it got so stagnated and kind of convoluted because we get so many scenes.
It was like it got so muddled in its own storyline, trying to figure out why Deli was murdered, but at the same time, whether whether Deli's body was going to be found by the sheriff department, who like they got a report from a witness, but the witness doesn't have a body, so there's nothing to go off of.
I think
a lot
also
of crazy stuff
not only that, but we get so many scenes with Patsy's husband, and Ty, where Ty is just again this moody teen. We even get Mike talking to her in one scene, kind of when she's sitting down, and I just felt like that brought like so much slowness to the episode. Pacing seemed to be all over the place in this hour.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree with you. I think the story as a whole didn't rely too much on his family. It was just the fact that when it did get there, it felt slow because not much was happening besides just like you wanted to find out what happened to Deli. You wanted to find out what happened to Deli. You wanted to find out what happened with those coins. You just want how he was going to deal with Moss. There was a lot of questions in the air, but it wasn't really until the last 5 minutes that you really get any answers.
Yeah, because he has a talk with his dad, and his dad is just like, look, you have to leave Florida. Florida is a hard place, and I don't think that you're going to be able to handle it. And then that's when Mike finally calls Moss, and he's like, look, it turns out that Deli's dead.
That's how you go through the dad's discussion with him. It felt like it was more tense than that. Like there was more stuff that was being brought up. Like it seemed, did he really say something along the lines of you just can't handle it here? He said, you are crazy, right? Or something like that?
Yeah, well, no, I mean, it was obvious. It was way more tension-filled than the first scene we see
I think he was
them.
saying, like, that Florida doesn't mix well with him. Like, he can't handle the crazy well. He'll get absorbed in it.
Yeah.
It wasn't that, like, okay, yeah.
And
we're getting obsessed with semantics and
he
stuff.
He calls Moss finally tells him that Deli ends up being dead. Mm-hmm. Moss just kind of, he's traumatized.
He's frozen. I think he's about to go send someone to kill Mike.
And then Mike hangs up the phone. Why does he hang up the phone? Because he walks into the room, and it turns out that Deli, again, another surprise, she ends up being alive, holding him at gunpoint in his hotel room. Yeah. And that's where the episode ends. And so I thought that the parts that worked really well in the show were the first 20 minutes, because it was how I felt Florida Man should have been. And then the scene where Deli died, and then the scene where Deli came back to life, because both those twists I thought worked really well for the show. What did you think?
I thought overall it was pretty basic. Like without the nudity, it would have been something that I would have expected to see on a network show. And also, I think that they kind of wasted an opportunity where it's called Florida Man. I'm expecting crazy, and I'm getting kind of cliche. It felt very like slow moving. I was so ready to come in here at the very end of the episode, 55 minutes of the realest goddamn place on earth, and say that's a 5. I'm not watching it. Agree with Decider who said skip it. But then that last ending twist happened, and it did pique my curiosity, because it's like, okay, when I first saw her body, I was like, check to see that she's actually dead. What if this is just all a big stage thing? And then I was like, oh wait, no, it's 100% real, because he's like walked out of there and she's clearly dead, and it wouldn't make sense. And then at the very end, that's exactly what ended up happening. And
that's probably the reason they did it that way. Yeah.
Why was she doing that? If he was the only one she had to convince, plans have changed for her or something. But I was invested at the very end there. I have to bump it up to a 6 out of 10. What would you give it?
I would agree. I would push her 6 out of 10. It just raises so many questions. Obviously, she wants to seem dead to someone, but I can't imagine it was Moss for whatever reason. Also, a big con I felt with this show was Moss. I hated his character. It's not the actor's fault. I just felt like, yes, there is a funny idea of a wimp being inherited, I guess, this criminal empire, but just overall, I found his character to be so annoying. Didn't you?
Nope.
You really? You didn't have a problem with Moss? I guess it was just the way that
they introduced him in a decent way for me. You've seen a lot of gang bosses like The Godfather and stuff, and it's that's the traditional route. And then sometimes you get like the really cheesy nepotism child who becomes like, you can either compare it to Ozark or you can compare it to what was that show? In Get Shorty, they also have a kind of, and in Barry, there's a lot of times where the boss is kind of corny and childish and unstable, and I just didn't mind that.
I think that this show, and it's better than Blockbuster by a mile, but I agree that this show was very tame, because you have the name, you definitely have funny scenes, you even have the actors for it. It's just, I don't feel like they're executing their premise maybe 20% when they could just go the full 100% and just go crazy with this thing.
For sometimes, I think the visuals reminded me a little bit of Poker Face. It didn't remind me too much of Dexter as much as I thought it would because of the Miami connection. But
I thought
Collider said in my review the mystery came too late, which I agree with. Has a 6.4 on IMDb.
I was just going to say that I thought it was going to remind me a little bit of Panhandle, but I didn't get that at all, especially with kind of like the crime murder aspect of it.
I get that.
But
Sure.
I think that, yeah, this was better than Panhandle, so it passes, just not that much.
So let me go through my 10-minute thing real quick again. So the first 10 minutes in Philly, the second 10 minutes, Mike has made his way to Florida with his family.
When
The
you say
third
in
10
Philly,
minutes,
do you mean New York, right?
they're in Philadelphia.
They say Hell's Kitchen on it.
Oh, do they?
Yeah, that's one of the names of the restaurants.
I could have sworn that Moss said at the dinner, he was like, "We've been in here for a year."
Maybe
in Philly
maybe you're right. The Hell's Kitchen restaurant is what made me think it was New York.
No, you might have a point there. I don't think it matters.
Okay.
And the one storyline we didn't point out though is that the ex-girlfriend detective keeps calling Mike because they found Gilbert's body, right?
Uh-huh.
And since he was all chopped up in a sewer and Mike is on the run in Florida, she's highly suspect of him. And but then in that third 10-minute thing, we find him tracking down Deli, making the exchange with Moss for his freedom. And then in the fourth 10 minutes, Deli is murdered. He has to connect the dots with that. And that's really, I would say, even almost 20 minutes. And then the last 5 minutes is where the real twist is with Deli being alive.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
But that's the overall episode. And do you want me to explain what the meme was about?
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
In 2013, the Twitter account _FloridaMan handle was created. That's what's considered the actual birth. But plenty of people can go back to even 2000's election and talk about how that's when people were talking about how crazy it was.
Yeah.
Really, it's back in 1976 when the Sunshine Law became a thing. That was post-Watergate, where every state was trying to say, well, we're going to make our records public. So whenever anybody was arrested, this applied specifically to Florida, it became open to public observation, like their entire arrest record, translating to we can publish the details of every arrest no matter what.
That's so strange.
So we get a lot more headlines like man gets tired of waiting at a hospital, steals ambulance, drives home. Man breaks into jail to hang out with friends. 18-year-old man arrested for posing as a doctor, opening fake doctor's office. Man bursts into ex's delivery room, fights new boyfriend while she's giving birth.
So that's why everyone always assumes that Florida is this crazy place, because they're one of the few places that...
It is crazy. But at the same time, there's a reason why all the stories are always so clickbaity. Mm-hmm. And it's because they have the exclusive opportunity to do so, where in most states, there's a lot more privatized laws that say you can't. But yeah, so it's existed for a long time. And they could have done something really crazy with this show. I feel like they kind of took it a tame route, and it's okay, but it's nothing super special.
No, I agree with that.
Thanks for listening. We'll see you in the next episode. Hope you enjoyed this one. Bye.